My name is Ciara Hickey.
And my name is Alyssa Kleist.
And we are the curators of the new exhibition at the MAC, which is called Mother Tongue. Mother Tongue is an exhibition of 21 artists who are based in Northern Ireland. The artists who are in the show have all taken part in the Freelance Artists Programme, which is a UK-wide artist development programme that's run through the Freelance Foundation and was organised through PS Squared, which is an artist-led organisation in Belfast.
Ciara and I worked with the 21 artists in the exhibition over a 5-year period on a programme of creative and professional development, and this exhibition brings together all of their work and their practices, which are really diverse and varied and exciting and represent some of the best contemporary artwork that is made in Northern Ireland today. Mother tongue is a term that denotes language learnt from birth or infancy and still understood. And we use this as a kind of gathering point to expand outwards on this idea of the languages and the means that we use to communicate our sense of self, a sense of belonging, and our connections and search for connections to the land, to family, to kinship. And so Mother tongue is a way of kind of gathering together shared concerns and shared thematics that run across all the works in the exhibition. One of the shared thematics is family, kinship, collaboration and cooperation. And we see this in the works of Myriad Carton, of Jacqueline Holt, of Brown and Bree, who worked with Jonathan H.S. Ross, Mitch Conlon and Thomas Wells. The theme of a family is central to a new sculptural installation that Thomas Wells has created for Mother Tongue that can be found in the upper gallery. It consists of a number of found objects and sculptural objects that to the artists represent both their grandmothers on the Irish side of the family and the English side of the family, but also explores this idea of matriarchal power and motifs and symbols associated with northern working class women. We find a number of evocative objects in this sculpture installation. There is a hand with manicured red nails holding darts. There is a number of novels, including romantic novels, that have been bound together by cellophane, and there are a number of objects that are symbolic of not a particular woman, but this idea of a powerful matriarch and the type of symbolic space that she might inhabit. Mitch Conlon is interested in alternative models of cooperation and of sustainability and has been working with the permaculture farmer Philip Allen, and the process of farming in a permacultural way involves looking at interconnected systems and interspecies collaboration and cooperation. The image that Mitch has included, which is a small framed photograph that has been hand painted, depicting a van filled with objects, was made during a project that Mitch worked on with Philip Allen at the Ormeau Recycling Centre, which was funded through Belfast City Council initiative, which looked at local histories of circular economies and alternative ways of managing waste.
Myriad Carton's work, Sorrow Had a Baby, is a very personal work that the artist has made, involving a lot of recorded conversations between her and her mother about their relationship as it exists now, but also looking back at their life together. A feature of the film which packs an extra punch, I suppose, is the inclusion of footage from Myriad's childhood, where her and her friends were acting out different scenes from TV programmes that they were watching at the time, things like America's Next Top Model and Baywatch. And they're funny, yes, but they're also really telling about how a young girl is fed information about how they're supposed to look and how they're supposed to act. So the work is a really powerful piece about family ties, but also about growing up and about kind of struggling and finding identity. Jacqueline Holt's work, which involves a silk hanging banner and a film, is a kind of reflection and a commemoration of the poetry of the everyday. Her film, Nothing Much Happening Here, is made up of 3 chapters of short films that were made inside the artist's house. Just kind of the artist going about her everyday, but overlaid with a track where the artist is talking about her deep personal feelings about things like her relationship to her mother, her relationship to her dog, and her moments of kind of fragility and vulnerability.
So kinship and collaboration are also themes that are in many ways central to the collective practice of Bridget Farron and Rachel Brown, who have worked together for years under the name Brown and Brie, and who have in previous projects also collaborated with Jonathan H.S. Ross. And for Mother Tongue, they have continued this collaboration and have created an installation that consists of found and salvaged objects, handmade devices and sculptural objects, and an image that is wall mounted depicting the Orpheus building, which used to be part of Ulster University, which is just across the road from the MAC. The Orpheus building was a fine art paint studio. Before that it was a ballroom, but ultimately it was quite an important space for citizens of the city and who have used it in different ways for generations. Rachel and Brie and Jonathan have installed a large steel column horizontally in the space that was salvaged by Daniel Dewsbury, an academic and a writer, from the Orpheus building before it was demolished. And they, in their space, have created an opportunity to contemplate and reflect on the act of salvaging, which is a civic act. It can be a generous act, and it's an act of care that they want to extend outwards and kind of share with the public.
Another thing we were looking at that arose in a lot of the works was the idea of the body. When you enter the upper gallery, the first thing that you see is artwork by Janie Doherty, 2 really large monumental hangings. One is a photograph of her and her young daughter in the bath. The other photograph is of her placenta. The work is a celebration of motherhood, but also a kind of look at the kind of internal worlds of motherhood as well. So looking at the placenta, it's obviously an organ that maintains life, but it's something that you don't usually get to see. And in her work, it almost becomes this living landscape. Jane Butler has several works included in the exhibition that are split between the upper gallery and the tall gallery. Jane is interested in the effects of the city and environment on the body. She is particularly interested in using light as a material, and in both her works in the upper gallery, where she has placed a coloured film over one of the large windows, which emits a really strong yellow light into the gallery space, which when you look at and look through, it completely alters your perception of the streetscape below. But also in her work in the tall gallery, it's a sculptural installation which is made with scaffolding pipes and a broken glass door which has been draped over the pipes. And this work, it's almost quite magical in its effect in that it changes over the course of a day, depending on the light that's coming into the gallery space. At times it can be a work that's quite quiet and kind of seems to glow, and at other times it creates this very kind of spectacular display of refracted light across the ceiling. Another of the artists whose work also deals with the body is Julie Lovett. She has 3 video works which are playfully exploring the kind of internal worlds of the artist and what it means to be an artist. Julie recently moved to County Kerry, rural Kerry, where she's from. She used to live in Belfast, and she's documented this experience of maintaining this kind of veneer of what a professional contemporary artist should be doing and should be saying, and the lofty thoughts that an artist should be having in her studio. But she's playing with this and also often kind of exposes the like deep insecurities and the precariousness, in fact, of being an artist, a contemporary artist in 2024.
So these connections to the body and the external world then extend into relationship with the land and landscape. We can find a lot of work that explores this in the Tall Gallery, where we have images by Heloise O'Reilly of Tory Island and the landscape there. Tory Island is an Irish language dominated island, and in her audio work she kind of explores how the landscape has affected the language and vice versa, and how there is a kind of interplay between the landscape of language and the physical environment, and how they're interconnected. We also see this relationship to the land and language in the work of Christopher Steenson. His work is a slide projection of moving slides projected onto a projector stand, and it is accompanied by soundscape or the sound of the corncrake, which is an endangered bird that is disappearing from the Irish landscape. Christopher uses this as a kind of symbol or an emblem of like the changes that are taking place in the Irish landscape that are not just physical changes, but also influenced by social, political and economic external factors. In the Sunken Gallery, we're showing a work by Emily McFarland, which was filmed on location in the Sperrin Mountains, and it was filmed at a protest camp that is occupied, or it occupies lands that have been bought up by Dalrinian, which is a large mining company, a global mining company actually, that has plans to mine the Sperrin Mountains for gold. There's been local oppositions from different communities who have set up a kind of a makeshift camp, and they talk about how the landscape and their connection to it will be affected by this large-scale mining extraction. So the theme of extraction can also be found in the work of Dorothy Hunter, who has created a wall-based installation of limestone that snakes its way up the gallery wall towards the rooftop window. So Dorothy is interested in solo mining practices that have been taking place in a quarry that she has been working in, but also this idea of the process of removing rocks by force from the soil and from the ground, and creating these alternative new subterranean spaces, and this process of emerging from these types of spaces, and by extension is kind of thinking about how languages can kind of emerge from these practices.
Thinking again about our relationship to landscape, there's an artwork called Swept by Susan Hughes, which plays across the upper gallery. Swept is actually a work that Susan made right at the beginning of her time in the Freelands Artist Programme, but it was an important work for her as it marked out a moment of a moment of epiphany in her practice. She had an experience of bioluminescent phosphorescence one night as she was swimming in the sea, and this particular experience of almost kind of psychedelic nature set her off on a course of research which she's continuing to pursue, and she has been looking at the experiences of psychedelia in nature and then relating that into folklore and storytelling, which she's gathered especially from different parts of Donegal. The audio work Swept is an experimental composition using field recordings from her time exploring these different stories and exploring different areas of Donegal, and is a really evocative piece which kind of sets the tone of the entire upper gallery. Tara McGinn has a work called Soft Laundry as part of the exhibition. This work consists of latex moulds that are draped across a rail. So these latex moulds, they're made from the windows and radiators in rooms of her house, in her mother's house and in her studio, and in P.S. Square, a place that she did a residency. The artist, Tara, she frequently employs the language of the domestic space to explore subjects such as trauma, memory and identity. And Soft Laundry is part of a body of work that was initially informed by a period of isolation and caring within the home, that's since developed into a wider dialogue on mobilising the uncanny and critiquing the aesthetics of the familiar.
Relationships to the land and landscape also includes relationships to the urban landscape and to the city that are explored in Mother Tongue. In the work of Jan McCulloch, which is titled Jigs, we see a series of images of carpenters' jigs that she has documented through her collaborations and working with fabricators based in East Belfast who work in the film industry and related industries that have come to dominate this part of the city and have replaced more traditional manufacturing industries. These are highly skilled practitioners, and she's really interested in the alternative miniature landscapes that they create and assemble and disassemble in order to create temporary moments and cityscapes and believable constructs for the film industry. While working in the workshops of these fabricators and carpenters, Jan came across a number of jigs that they use in their everyday fabrication, that she has photographs in sets that she has constructed herself. She lends these jigs a beautiful sculptural quality, which is highlighted in the series of 7 photographs included in the exhibition.
Philip McCreely has 2 works in the exhibition. The first is Liberty Lad, which is an imagined sign which exists just outside of the main upper gallery space in the corridor. The reason why we put it out there is kind of reflecting Philip's interest in researching queer spaces in Northern Ireland. These spaces often exist, I suppose, in discrete or marginalised areas of the city. The work that he has made for the MAC, the Liberty Lad, it's an imagined sign for a real place that did exist at one point in Belfast. It was a place called the Carpenter Club. It was a really extensive disco and coffee bar, and was a really important space. It no longer exists. It would have been in Long Lane, where Ryder Square now is. In producing this new imagined sign, it's a way of the artist commemorating the importance and the kind of utopian freedoms that these places represent. Philip's other work is just inside that door, and he has repurposed a sign from a previous work called Wet Heat, and he's using this to signpost a new project that he's doing at the moment, where he is learning how to make pasta with a professional chef. The artwork at the MAC is Philip's way of kind of documenting this process as he is learning how to make pasta from scratch, and also thinking about the discarded pasta shapes that don't meet the standards of the professional chef. He's offering these bags of misshapen pasta for people to pick up and bring home and cook with. And I suppose it's him thinking about the idea of value and waste, but also him charting this process of him learning to develop this new skill. Robin Price's work in the exhibition is a gallery maquette of an exhibition that he made for the Freelands Gallery in 2023. This work charts the process and the struggle and the absurdity of taking an idea and realising it in public domain, and the idea of failure and value and success that is also kind of part and parcel of an artist's experience.
In the back of the upper gallery, we've installed 3 photographs taken by Michael Hanna. They are the result of a project that Michael collaborated on with the academic Dan Webster. 0.1 kilometres was photographed in Belfast and Milan within a 0.1 kilometre radius in each city. Michael took a number of photographs in these urban spaces and edited in photographs taken from his personal archive of kind of intimate domestic moments featuring him and his family. They demonstrate the intersection between private and public space, but specifically internet spaces or online spaces where the private and public interact. Using Google search terms, these images became available to viewers and users on their devices, on their phones, within the 0.1 kilometer radius where the photographs were taken in each city. And 3 of those images are represented in mother tongue. They sit alongside a maquette of a proposed public artwork for Belfast called Pyrong for Belfast. Pyrong for Belfast proposes the first 9 digits of pi with the last digit deliberately wrong, and is a public mistake at a massive scale, which invites viewers of the work to kind of think about error and failure, and by extension consider the idea of utopia as this impossible state of being.
Terrascope is an artwork by Yasmin Mohsen Sahar. It is a 3D sculpture that resembles a telescope. It's positioned so that it's looking out of a window in the upper gallery. But if you put your eye to the lens of the telescope, you won't see the stars, you won't see the cityscape. What you will see is microorganisms from a soil sample from the Lagan Valley that's been cultivated in a petri dish. So she's drawing our attention rather than to the I suppose the sky or the city landscape, to this very, 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 very micro level of organisms that exist around us.
This exhibition marks a particular moment in time and for the first time brings together these 21 very exciting practices. It is representative of a contemporary moment within Northern Irish and Northern Ireland based art production, and it offers an exciting opportunity for audiences here to experience all these practices together for the first time.